Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Welcome to Big Blend Radio with Nancy and Lisa. We are the Big Blend mother-daughter team who publish Big Blend Radio and TV magazine, as well as Parks and Travel magazine. You can see them both. Just go to BigBlendMagazines.com. And together we also travel full-time on our Love Your Parks tour, where we are visiting and covering all of America's parks and public lands and their communities. And of course, we don't mind hopping borders. If you know how we are, we love to go to Africa and Mexico and England, and we'll go to Canada. We'll go anywhere. But it's all about parks, public lands, and the communities and the stories that we find there. I'm very excited about today's featured guest. We have author Dianne Romain joining us. She's joining us to talk about her debut novel. It's called The Trumpet Lesson, and it explores how societal attitudes about teenage pregnancy, race, adoption, family, and homosexuality affect personal integrity. It's also a story of how music plays a key role in healing from hidden loss. You can get the book now. It's through She Writes Press. Actually comes out September 24th, 2019. You can get it on Amazon, all those great places, but also go right to Dianne's website. It's DianneRomain.com, and that's Dianne with two N's because she's special. And Romain, there's no E on there. It's not the lettuce. So DianneRomain.com. She's also on Twitter and Facebook. But welcome, Dianne. How are you?
Good. I really appreciate being on here. I've enjoyed reading about your radio and magazine, and it just looks so interesting what you're doing. I love it.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
We find you interesting too. I love it because you're living in Guanajuato. Am I saying that correctly?
Guanajuato, yes.
Guanajuato.
Uh-huh.
And one of our traveling friends, Henry Bernacki, we did an interview. He goes out there all the time. He travels the world, and he's a pilot, and he just loves to go walk the streets of Guanajuato, as he says. Yeah. And that's what he does. He just goes out and walks streets everywhere around the world. But he told us a lot of history where you are. And Nancy and I lived in Mexico before we started our magazine. We lived in La Bufadora, it was kind of Punta Banda, just south of Ensenada, for a few years as well. So we understand that. Jump the border and check out what's going on the other side. What's it like over there?
Well, it's beautiful. It's beautiful in so many ways. Today it's beautiful and sunny. There are clouds in the sky. At this time of year, we often get rain, thunderstorms, and those are beautiful too, with lightning and exciting. That usually happens later in the day, in the evenings. Yeah. And then we have wonderful colonial architecture here because this was a silver and gold mining area. And so there are beautiful, beautiful buildings downtown. It's a heritage site.
Yeah.
So yes, it's really a very special place. There are lots of plazas. You walk. That people come here to walk, that your friend does, it totally makes sense because, for example, where I live, you cannot drive to my house.
Cool.
No, there are sidewalks you walk on. It's narrow. In some places, you can touch the buildings on either side of the paths. They're basically footpaths and stairways. Because we're in a box canyon, and the sides are rather steep, and so that means you don't drive on things that steep. So yeah.
How do you get your supplies? Because I know when we lived in Mexico, the baker would come around, the water, it would come fill the pila. Remember, Nancy?
Yes.
Fill the water pila, and everybody would just drive around and bring things, and you'd go to the market and things like that. But kind of where we were was really kind of very rural at that time. I mean, we're talking over 20 years ago, but even our magazine at that point, we wanted to use the magazine to bridge the gap between the two countries, yet they're so connected. But I don't want to get into the whole politics of things, but there's also I wanted we both wanted people to understand that Mexico is a very friendly country and amazing people. Is that part of what drew you there? Is the people?
Yes. Well, initially we had come to Mexico before, but when we decided to take a leave, my guy and I were both faculty at a small university in
And
California.
both writers too, right? Yeah, both
Yes,
writers.
yes. And so we took a leave 20 some years ago. But we did that because we wanted to know more about Mexico because of students that we had with Mexican heritage in California. And we had already studied some Spanish, but we also wanted to learn more Spanish. And so we initially came to Mexico for that reason. But we just fell in love with Mexico. We fell in love with, there's so much variety here. There are mountains, there are lakes, there are coasts, there are desert areas, there are tropical areas. So it's a fascinating country just visually, just going around and looking at it. But the history is very fascinating of Mexico also.
Is it nice to just kind of be in a different place to write? Does that help you, to inspire you to get it done as you go in and start to write a book? I mean, I know you've written a nonfiction book before, so this is your debut in fiction. Did it help you writing it by being there?
Well, in the sense that I decided to have as a location Guanajuato for my book, it definitely helps to be here because I know the city quite well, and I know people of all types who live here, foreigners and Mexicans, and Mexicans who grew up in this state, Mexicans who grew up elsewhere, and foreigners from the States or from other places. So that really helps to live here and spend time here and really get a sense of how it works.
Yeah. Because there's texture to your writing. I love it because you have that, and Nancy and I both are this way, that an author that can put you into a place immediately and have that texture to writing where it's not over textured. You know what I mean? You don't want too much, but you get right there, but you have that feeling and that taste, that smell.
That's believable.
Exactly. You're there, you believe it, you're right in it. And so I think that is such a special talent. And this is your debut, fiction side. So where did that come from? Being able to do that, other than living there, have you taken courses? Have you done a lot of other kind of writing to help you get that sense of place? Because I think even nonfiction needs to have sense of place.
Yes. Well, what happened is that many years ago, when I was teaching, one of the areas I was most interested in was emotion, philosophy and emotion. But I found my training was in analytic philosophy. And I found that the analytic philosophers tended to write about emotion as if they had never had one. And I wanted to write somewhat differently about emotion. So I took a fiction writing class because I thought that fiction techniques, if I could use those to incorporate some storytelling into my philosophical writing, that it would work more in the way I wanted it to work. So yeah, many years ago, I took fiction writing, and then I ended up in a writing group. I was in a writing group for 23 years in California before I moved to Mexico. And then since then, I've taken many workshops, and I'm an academic. I read, I do research. So I'm constantly getting books about fiction writing, tips, websites, you name it. I've gone.
You don't write like an academic, though. Let me just put it that way. See,
thank you.
No, you write like an artist. You're an artist, okay? So that's what I'm saying. It's like when you say academic, we all start seeing math and algebra. I ain't seen that.
Like, well,
No, it didn't happen. Let's give everybody an overview of the trumpet lesson. Nancy and I are both in the middle of the beginning, so and it's a good thing because we do have big mouths.
Tend to spill the beans.
We do, and I don't want to, but I tell everybody in the trumpet lesson I want to talk about the music side and you playing the trumpet, and and hey, you're in Mexico, trumpet music rocks over there. So
Yeah.
and so tell us just an overview and talk about Callie and introduce her.
Okay. Well, the way I usually talk about the trumpet lesson is to tell a little bit about how shy, and she's very introverted and shy person. And one day she's downtown in Guanajuato, and she's hearing a song called The Lost Child, El Niño Perdido. It's a mariachi song, and it's two trumpeters. It's a trumpet duet, and one of them plays the role of the lost child and is usually off behind a tree somewhere and hidden, and then one plays the parent, and the duet goes back and forth, and then of course with the backup of the rest of the mariachis. Well, when she hears this song, she's never heard it played quite this way before. And she's so moved by it. And she's watching to see who is the trumpeter playing the child part. And when the trumpeter comes out, it turns out to be a woman that she had seen, somebody new in town. She didn't know her, but she had seen her before. And and she had been interested in her, but she was so moved by how the woman played. And yet the woman had such confidence and poise also. She was fascinated with that poignancy and poise together in one person. And so she went up to her and asked for a trumpet lesson. And she was kind of taken aback after having done that. But in any case, she did. And one thing leads to another. And through getting to know this woman, through doing some of the breathing exercises and so on, she is confronting again and again the loss of her own child. She had relinquished a baby for adoption many years before in a closed adoption. So that's what the story is about. It's about her dealing with her loss and through music beginning to come to terms with it.
Wow, and it's interesting too, when the music is like, to me it's medicine, right? It's like, when they say, eat to nourish your body, not to kill it, it's the same thing. Music is the same way to me. Music it's everything in the world. And when it comes to trumpet playing, you don't see that many female trumpet players. It's like you don't see that many female drummers or bass players in a band, a rock group. They're there, and every time I see them, I'm like, yeah, let's go, But a trumpet player on that feminine energy is a very interesting and different thing. So have you experienced a female trumpet player? I know that you took lessons, right?
I took lots of lessons, and I took lessons from many different trumpeters, and I took lessons in different places. I took them in Guanajuato, I took them in the US in several places, and in France. I did finally have a female trumpet teacher, and her name, she has since died, unfortunately. She's a wonderful woman. Her name was Lori Frink, and she's well known among trumpeters as someone who helps trumpeters who have physical problems. And I had developed one. And so I did some online lessons, actually Skype lessons with her. But she was a jazz trumpet player and teacher in New York City.
Oh, wow. And going through this and looking at music being the vessel of the story, that's that part of it, of the trumpet lesson and how that moves through Callie's life. Did it change you taking these lessons? Did you connect in a different emotional way that you may not have expected?
Oh, yes. I used to sing, just for my own enjoyment. And I developed a problem that I just couldn't sing the same way. I play piano, but I started playing the trumpet really to get to know my characters. So I happened to be on the way to go surfing at the coast, and we stopped in Guadalajara, and I saw a music store, and there was a trumpet there, and it was only, I don't remember how many pesos, but under $130. And so I thought, oh, I should just have a trumpet, because then I'll see, what does it feel like? And so on and so forth. And so I called a trumpet playing friend, and he said, yes, bye, it'll be fine. Well, at any rate, I ended up falling in love with the trumpet. And one reason I did, to get back to the emotion and your question, is that it's like singing. The feelings that you have singing, the all of the emotional expression that you can make singing, you can do with the trumpet. And so, yeah, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Wow. That's amazing. For me, I was a singer for a number of years and do more blues and that kind of thing. And I've asthma, and so growing up in different countries, some were fine. When we were in England, I'm sick all the time. But then even on the coast, when we lived in San Diego, the coast, the fog would, well, when I really got into singing and I was doing it a lot, I developed, basically, you develop muscles and you learn your diaphragm. As soon as all of that, and we had to stop the band for numerous reasons, because it was a band, and it's like, it went a little crazy, and I could write a book just on that.
Yeah.
Nancy's a keyboardist, and piano player as well. And so anyway, when I stopped, lo and behold, I started getting the asthma thing again. All of that came in. And I think emotionally, there is a release in music that happens, and I think it also is connected to breathing. So there's like a meditation. I smoked many years ago. Don't tell my mom. She said,
right
but I
here,
did.
and I knew all the time.
But it's the same thing. And why did I smoke? It was a breathing thing, which ties back to singing. And, why would you smoke and sing? That's stupid, but I did. But that is, it to me, is really all connected. It's about breathing, calming, and being in some kind of interesting zone that I don't know how to explain it other than you meditate out somewhere,
Yes, I agree. I think breathing is a really important part of it. And it's also, well, voice does this too, but with the trumpet, there's the resonance and the vibrations.
Yeah, wow.
And all of that physical experience of playing. I'd often, with a trumpet, you have to play kind of short periods, because it's very easy to wear out these muscles of your mouth. And
like
so
vibration.
and so you warm up, and then you warm up again over a day. You brush your teeth a lot, I'll tell you, because you're supposed to brush your teeth before you play. So like, you brush your teeth and you play for 15 minutes, then you do something else, and you come brush your teeth again, play some more. Anyway, so
I had no idea about that.
I didn't know about that either.
Hey, listen, everybody, you can date a trumpet player. They've got clean teeth.
Yeah. Why is that?
Yeah, that's a whole.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Well,
Why?
you don't want to, as you're breathing into your instrument, you would like not to have little particles go into your
instrument. Gosh, I never thought of
that's
that.
funny. So like spinach comes out the other end when you blow a B flat. There goes some spinach.
Okay, so now my whole mind is like, how many musicians are like, here, come play in the bar and we'll give you a free meal. Eat the free meal after the performance. Spanish rice, there it goes. Oh, I'm sorry, that's just funny. Never thought of it. So you do that, and then, but the vibration has got to like be able to monitor. That's got to be a different kind of feel.
Well, you mean, making all those vibrations. It's really something. And you can practice just with your lips. You can buzz. I don't know if I can, I'll try a little bit.
Wait, I want to try it. It's like when I was a kid. I used to do this all the time on dirt roads.
I know, it's funny.
So this is it, everybody. Big Blend Radio.
Yeah,
How to
here we
blow
go.
your trumpet without one. And brush your teeth first, please.
I have to say, my brother, when we were growing up, my brother played the trumpet, and I wanted to play the trumpet because he played the trumpet, and my parents would know, you're a girl, you can't play the trumpet because the trumpet would ruin your lips. And I was like, oh. And so then I wanted to play the trombone, and they're like, are you kidding me? 'Cause my other brother
Right.
was playing the trombone. They're like, you won't even have lips. So I mean, now I'm looking, your lips look fine. I think they were wrong.
Wow.
I've never heard that particular reason why
Yeah.
women or girls were discouraged from the trumpet. But I think, in fact, the character in my novel, Pamela, was discouraged. Her father would have none of it. He
Yeah,
had
it's
a
like,
fit, but she was initially discouraged by her band director.
Really?
isn't
Wow.
it weird?
See,
I mean,
so,
this is a male instrument and that's a female instrument. Who came up with that?
I don't know, but yes,
You
it
know.
used to be that way. I think it's
Yeah.
better now.
well,
Definitely.
doesn't that
so.
also tie into, I mean, you chose the trumpet for a reason, right? I mean, because isn't it also tie into a woman giving a child for adoption is very difficult. Like if a man does it, it's almost like, oh, well, he can do that. He's a guy. You know what I mean? There's that interest. And it's not easy for either parent. Honestly, it's not
No.
an easy thing.
No.
But it's a very painful thing. And I know friends who have been through on both sides, the child who's been adopted out. It's a very emotional thing. And I don't know if it ever leaves you, whether you're the child or the biological parent, if this part of your life, if you can ever just, I don't know if you can really come to terms with that. I think it's always sitting on your shoulder in some way.
I think it would be. I've done quite a bit of reading about this, and the women who talk about their experiences do say that, definitely. There may be women for whom that isn't the case and who haven't, and I haven't come across their statements. And it could be that the women who are particularly carrying around this experience and having the harder time with it, it might be that they're more likely to talk with other people about what's going on, but not always. I mean, I think the other thing is, if you go around, you find there are many people who are adopted, and you find there are many people who adopt, but you don't know nearly as many people, or I haven't, who have relinquished babies. And I think it's because people don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, it's very difficult. It's also very hard for a woman, especially if she's also had an abortion. It seems to, there's parallel lines. The one child is alive, one's not, but there's a difficulty, even when it may have been the right, correct, best choice on either side. That is a very deep, hard decision to make, no matter what age, what circumstance, to be able to, and then follow through with it has got to be, you make the decision and then it happens.
And then wonder, did you do the right thing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Always.
And many of the women who relinquished in the 60s were girls, really, 14, 15, 16, 17. And their parents made the decisions. Sometimes they even had a boyfriend who wanted to marry them, and the parents would say no. And so that there are many different situations for these girls, but I think partly because they didn't have a choice, it made it even, well, in some ways, maybe it's easier because you could say, well, it was my parents, I had to do it. But in other ways, I don't think so, because I think as I said, many of them wanted to keep their babies and their parents wouldn't let them.
And it also depends on the families and their who they are, their beliefs, but also who they are in the community. There's I remember growing up as a teenager in South Africa, and a lot of my friends, when we graduated, were getting married and having children, right? So that was kind of the expected. But if you did it, I mean, it's almost like on this day, everybody go for it. And the day before that, oh no, and you cannot be, that's a big, you know what I mean? There's this weird thing.
Yes.
And then they would send, they would send young girls to Switzerland or Sweden to have abortions because it's illegal in South Africa at that point. Or the adoption side, which was it's not an easy thing. And I had a good friend, she's still a good friend of mine, who was adopted, and I, grew up with her, in South Africa, and she's always wondering, but now she's got her own healthy, happy family, married high school sweetheart that I've been friends with for years. It's crazy cool, but that you'd get sent out to be adopted if the family didn't want to look like, oh, my daughter went off and, she's a slut if it happened, basically.
Yes.
You're a slut. You're this and that. It doesn't matter. She may have been raped. It could have been a mutual consent thing. No matter what, you're a slut, and I'm the big banker, or I'm the big whatever, and therefore we're going to have this all hush-hushed no matter what.
It was the same in this country. It's the same in this country. It really was the same in this country.
And in the 60s, wasn't it that way too?
Definitely.
Absolutely. And before that, it was really, really bad.
So do you look at this as also part of a book in regards to feminism?
Yes. I am a feminist, and I used to teach feminist philosophy, feminist ethics. And I think of feminism the way over the years I learned more about it, that it doesn't just deal with women. It deals with any group that has been marginalized in society. And so one of the things that I think of as a feminist is that I want to learn more about marginalized groups. I want to do what I can to support people who are in marginalized groups. And so in my novel, well, if you think of who is marginalized in my novel or come from marginalized groups, I have gay and lesbian characters in my novel. I have African American characters in my novel, Mexican in my novel. And to be a woman who's relinquished a baby, that is a highly marginalized group, almost invisible group. Also, Callie is from a working class family. So I really wanted to deal with different groups, different marginalized groups. And also because I find that interesting. I find it interesting to read about and learn about people who are in groups different from the group that I grew up in. In some ways, of course, I grew up in a similar way. My family was working class when I grew up, and lived in a small town in Missouri. So in some ways, I know the kind of climate that Callie grew up in, what it was like to be in a small town in Missouri in those days. So that her story is not my story, but I know quite a bit about what
you can connect.
Yes.
Yeah, that feeling of it. I think, well, we're still marginalized as women, in a lot of ways.
Well, yes.
And
it's interesting that women for centuries have been under the laws totally made by men. And it's interesting that men are so surprised when women say enough of that. Well,
Yes.
I mean, because if the roles were reversed and then men have for centuries been under the rule of law that women were in charge
and
of.
not allowed to vote for many, many years.
Yeah, and everything that happened to women happened to men. I think they would maybe understand. What I find interesting is their minds, not all men, of course, can't seem to go there and understand that we don't understand why they should tell us what to do.
Yes. Yes.
There's no reason for it. There's
Right.
no logical reason.
Yeah.
And
There isn't.
yes, and I think that's one reason why it's good for women to get to know and come together with people in other marginalized groups, because
Absolutely. You can
we
unite.
share similar um, problems, similar
Exactly.
challenges.
Exactly. And this is
You're gay and you're growing up gay. I really seriously do not understand why anybody else cares. I don't even understand why it's their business.
no, exactly.
I
But
don't get it.
but if we work together, I think you're really right about this. And I think it's important that, fiction plays a role in
Mm.
this. I think that's huge because you're connecting with people that are going through something, and then at the same time educating people who may not have had that. And you talk about emotion.
Yeah.
Fiction is emotion. It brings that emotion, and I think that is, if you can't, I know you know about teaching and the academic side of the world, but isn't it stories that sell the information? You have to have the
Yes,
story.
well, when I was a graduate student and very anxious, I was at UC Berkeley and I was very anxious, and I wanted to read about psychology to learn more about, well, how can I feel better? How can I have a more effective way of being in the world and dealing with myself? And so I would read psychology texts and so on, and I didn't really find that useful initially. And then I started reading Proust, Remembrances of Things
Mhm.
Past. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's
Yeah.
somebody that I can relate to. There's somebody, that writer knows what it's like
Yeah.
to
It's
be a
empowering.
little, yes, yeah. So yes, I think, yes, that fiction is very important for helping us not feel alone to
Mhm.
begin with, that there are other people who are going through maybe rough times and trying to figure out how to deal with them, or maybe to get to know people that we didn't know, that we hadn't had a chance to know somebody in that situation. And maybe we were a little unkind even to somebody, and only after reading about somebody like that person do we realize, oh my goodness, I was unkind, or I was not aware of what that person would be going through. So I
Wow.
think fiction is very helpful for understanding our own emotions and the emotions of others.
Well, you can play out scenarios without having to go through it, for sure. Like for
Yes.
real, you can play out different scenarios and say, well, what if this happened, then that would happen, or maybe it happened this way or that way. So it kicks your imagination off. So you can start reading about something and like, oh, maybe it's going to happen this way or it's going to happen that way. And now you're really actually thinking.
And it takes you out of your comfort zone, even though it provides you, because if you're in a situation, you end up in a comfort zone, right? And then if
Yes.
fiction can take you out of that comfort zone, you feel that connectivity, but it'll take you out and go, okay, I can venture a step. This character did this. Maybe I can take this step out. You know what I mean? So I
Yes.
think that's another huge part of it. Now that you've written a fiction novel, everybody out September 24th, 2019, The Trumpet Lesson, Dianne Romain, you got to go get it. Are you going to do more? Has the bug bitten you, the fiction bug, to write another novel?
Well, I started another novel. I'm not sure. It usually takes me a while to write something, so we'll see how that goes. But I have started one, and it's fun so far. It's interesting for me, so I like that. And then the other thing, it's also set in Guanajuato, and that particular novel is going to deal with what I call relative privilege, because a lot of us don't have billions of dollars, but we have more advantages than other people have. And how do we deal with that? How do we deal when we know there are inequalities of various sorts? How do we deal with what we have, the privileges that we have? So the novel is exploring this. Other than that, I'm also writing short stories that are set in Guanajuato, and that I'm experimenting with trying to write in different genres. So like writing a ghost story, writing a mystery, writing a detective story,
Cool.
a romance.
I like
yeah. And I think it's fun. It gives me a little break, and it gives me an opportunity to finish something within a relatively short time.
I know that feeling. I know that feeling with us as magazines and everything. It's like, okay, come on. Can we birth this puppy? Get out. Get out. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Dianne. Such a pleasure again, everyone. Dianne Romain. It's Dianne with 2 N's and Romain with no E on the end there. It's called The Trumpet Lesson. It's published through She Writes Press, and you can get it September 24th. Pre-order it now, too. DianneRomain.com is the website, and get it on Amazon, all those great places. We want to thank JKS Communications for introducing us to the amazing Dianne. JKS Communications, you know what? They sent us on a story assignment as we travel the country on our Love Your Parks tour to go find literary stories, and I cannot believe the people we've been bumping into. It started with John Steinbeck's History, where we were. Now we've got James Michener. We've got Dick Wick Hall, who was an American humorist in the Southwest in this teeny town of Siloam. I don't know. It's crazy what we're finding. So it's good stuff. So thank you, JKS Communications. You can keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. Our shows air Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. You can listen live or anytime later on demand. And also keep up with our author interviews at blendradioandtv.com. Dianne, we love to play music for our guests. And guess what? I have a trumpet song for you. And I have to, this is important. This is called My Vagabond. It was written by the great, amazing artist, and I say amazing, he's still one of my favorites, is Ted DeGrazia, famous Southwest Arizona artist. He built his own gallery, his own mission, his own everything out of Adobe out in Tucson, Arizona. If you ever get out there, I think you'd dig this. He studied under Diego Rivera and Jose Orozco in Mexico.
Wow.
And he's the world's top reproduced artist in the world, and did a lot of work. So they found, after he'd passed, they found all kinds of things in the gallery. Silver bullets and Chivas Regal boxes. It's
cash.
We do interviews with the DeGrazia Gallery in the Sun all the time, and there's always a new story. And we've been doing this for 10 years, and there's always a new story about Ted DeGrazia as a Renaissance man. But they found these manuscripts of his music. And his son, Domingo DeGrazia, is a flamenco Spanish-style guitar player. And he got together with the Tucson Jazz Ensemble and Jazz Orchestra in the university, and they recreated Ted DeGrazia's music. And this song is My Vagabond, and there's trumpet in this, and it's trumpet. And I was like, we have to play it. So everyone, the album is called Please Remember Me, and you can go to degrazia.org to order it. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a true pleasure.
Thank you. I really enjoyed speaking with you guys. Wonderful. And I hope your trip goes great. It just sounds fascinating.
Well, it's a long, strange trip. It's a long, strange trip. It's been. Maybe we'll get out your way. If we cross that border, we'll let you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. You take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.